This psalm may seem like just ancient poetry, written thousands of years ago by people living in a completely different world. But it's not what you think, because hidden inside these simple lines is a powerful psychological map of the human soul. Carl Jung, one of the most famous thinkers in psychology, spent his whole life exploring the parts of ourselves we try to ignore, our fears, our hidden emotions, and the side of us we pretend doesn't exist. And surprisingly, the same themes Jung studied for decades show up in this psalm, quietly waiting to be understood in a new way. Most people read a psalm and think it's only about religion or spiritual comfort. But what if it's also a message for your inner healing? What if the pain you feel, the confusion you carry, and the emotional emptiness that follows you all have a solution hidden in these ancient words? That's what we're about to explore, because this psalm doesn't just talk about God and peace. It talks about the valley of darkness, the fear of enemies, the need for protection, and the deep hope for inner safety. All things Jung spent his life writing about. Jung believed every person carries a shadow, a dark side of the self we avoid or don't even recognize. He said that unless we face it, we can never truly heal. The psalm speaks of walking through a valley of shadow, not running, not hiding, but walking through it. This is not just religious poetry, it's a guide for transformation. Jung would say this is the journey of facing your shadow, the process of becoming whole. The idea that spiritual texts can also be psychological maps may sound surprising, but many of Jung's ideas, like the collective unconscious, the symbols in dreams, the need to connect to something greater, are reflected in the deeper meaning of the psalm. It's not a coincidence. Jung studied ancient texts, myths, dreams, and religious stories because he believed they were all ways the unconscious mind speaks to us. And what is a psalm if not a cry from the deep human heart? Think about this. When the psalm says, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies," it's not just about real people who hurt you. It's about the parts of yourself that feel like enemies: fear, shame, regret. Jung said healing means sitting with those parts, not pushing them away, but letting them come to the table. That's real transformation. That's what changes lives. So from the very first line to the very last, this psalm carries something much deeper than comfort. It carries a path. And when you read it with Carl Jung's lens, it becomes a map of inner change. Not fast change, not surface-level change, but deep, honest, lifelong healing. And that's why this psalm can change your life, starting today. If this psalm had never been written, if Carl Jung had never dared to explore the hidden parts of the mind, many of us would still be living in quiet suffering, thinking we're alone in our confusion. Most people today walk around with a sense of anxiety. They can't explain. They feel disconnected from themselves, from others, and even from God, but they don't know why. They blame their jobs, their relationships, their past, and yet the emptiness stays. That's where the real danger lies. Because when we don't understand our inner world, we repeat the same emotional patterns again and again without even knowing it. Carl Jung warned us about this. He said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That means if you don't face the hidden thoughts, emotions, and fears buried deep inside they will control your choices. They will damage your relationships. They will block your peace. The psalm knows this too. That's why it doesn't start with peace. It starts with need. "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want." That line isn't about luxury. It's about spiritual hunger. It's about the deep ache to be guided, to be seen, and to feel safe. Now think for a moment. If we ignore this wisdom, what happens? We keep pretending. We keep running from our shadow. We chase temporary things, money, Attention, success, hoping they'll fix the ache, but they never do. Jung said that modern people are not just physically tired, they are spiritually starved. They are hungry for meaning, hungry for healing. And the scariest part, most don't even know it, but what if, right now, you could pause? What if you could finally stop running and sit with the parts of you that you've ignored for years? What if this psalm could become a mirror, not just for prayer, but for deep reflection? That's what's at stake here. Not just feeling better for a few minutes, but waking up to your own life again, becoming whole again, feeling real peace, not just distraction. When Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming your true self, he described a path very similar to the one in this psalm, a path that starts in darkness, moves through fear, faces enemies, and ends in stillness. That's not a coincidence, that's a calling. The truth is, if we don't take this journey, the journey into the shadow, into the valley, we stay trapped. We keep repeating the past, and slowly we forget who we really are. But you don't have to live like that. The wisdom is already here. The words are already written. The path is already open. The only question is, will you walk it? Let's now step into the heart of this teaching, the psalm itself. Most likely you've heard these words before. Maybe at a funeral, in a church, or on a poster somewhere. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. But let's slow down. Read it again. What does it really mean? A shepherd is someone who guides, protects, and leads. In ancient times, sheep were vulnerable. Without a shepherd, they would easily get lost, be attacked by predators, or fall into dangerous places. The writer of this psalm is saying something profound. I am like that sheep. I am vulnerable. I am easily lost. I need guidance. Carl Jung often spoke about the ego, the part of us that thinks it knows everything, the part that believes we are in control. But deep down, he knew we are not fully in charge. Our unconscious mind is vast and powerful. We don't always know why we feel what we feel or why we do what we do. That's why surrender is so important. This first line of the psalm is an act of surrender. It's saying, I am not the shepherd of my life. I need help from something greater than my own limited view. Then comes the next line, He makes me lie down in green pastures. This is not just about nature. Green pastures are symbols of rest, nourishment, safety. But did you notice the wording? He makes me. Sometimes we don't even know when we need rest. We push ourselves too far. We stay busy to avoid thinking or feeling. Jung believed the unconscious will try to speak to us through dreams, through emotions, through breakdowns, even illness. Not to punish us, but to slow us down, to say, lie down, stop running, let your soul breathe. He leads me beside still waters. Still waters are calm, peaceful, deep, not loud, not noisy, not rushing. This is a direct invitation into silence, the kind of silence where real healing begins. Jung said, your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. But we can't do that in noise. We need stillness. The psalm is not just comforting here, it's guiding. It's showing us how to reconnect with our deeper self, not through activity, but through presence. He restores my soul. This is one of the most powerful lines, because it says what we all secretly feel, that our soul is tired, that it needs to be restored. And the word restore means to bring something back to its original state. When we're children, we are often whole, open, and full of emotion. But over time, we get hurt. We hide parts of ourselves. We split into pieces. Jung called this the fragmentation of the self. Healing is the process of bringing those pieces back together. That's restoration. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. This isn't about moral judgment. It's about walking in alignment, walking in truth. Jung taught that when we live a lie, when we ignore who we really are, we suffer. Righteousness here means authenticity, living in harmony with your real values, your real calling, not the image the world wants you to present. The psalm says the path is already there. You are being led to it. But are you listening? Now we reach the most famous line. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. This is the turning point. This is the descent. In Jungian psychology, this is the moment you enter the shadow, the unconscious, the fear, the doubt, the pain, the parts of you that have been hidden. Jung said that real growth only comes when we face what we've been avoiding. You don't grow on the mountaintop, you grow in the valley. You grow when you walk through the darkness, not around it. The key word here is through, not stuck, not abandoned, through. And why does the writer fear no evil? For you are with me. Notice how the language shifts. Before this point, the psalm says, He makes me, He leads me. But now it becomes, you are with me. This is deeply intimate. In the valley, when things are darkest, God is not a distant force. He becomes close, personal, present. Jung believed that the unconscious becomes a companion when you stop fighting it, when you welcome it. You begin to feel something sacred, not just outside you, but inside you. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. The rod and staff were tools of a shepherd, one to guide, the other to protect. In other words, even discipline and correction are signs of care. Many of us resist change because we fear pain. But Jung taught that pain is part of becoming conscious. The rod doesn't punish, it redirects. It keeps you on the path when you wander. And that brings comfort, not fear. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. This is one of the most mysterious lines. A table is a place of peace, nourishment, and honor. But why set it in front of enemies? Because healing doesn't mean escaping your pain. It means sitting down with it, facing your fear, facing your guilt, facing your past. Jung would say your enemies are often inside you, parts of yourself you haven't accepted. This line says you can sit in peace even with those parts. You can be whole. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. In ancient times, oil was used for blessing, healing, and choosing someone for a special role. This is a sign of deep value, of being seen, of being worthy. Jung believed every person has a self, a center beyond the ego, and that when we align with that self, we overflow, not just survive, not just get by, but overflow with peace, insight, and purpose. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. These are not just wishes. These are results of the journey. If you walk the path, if you face the valley, find the stillness, and meet your shadow, you begin to carry goodness and mercy with you, and they follow you, not just in good moments, all the days of your life. And I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This is not about a building. The house is a state of being, a place inside you, a place of belonging. Jung would say, this is individuation, becoming whole, coming home to your true self. Great. Since you don't want to focus on religion, the next section, Carl Jung's teachings, the mirror to the psalm, will be entirely psychological and symbolic. I'll focus on how Carl Jung's ideas align with the inner transformation journey that the psalm reflects, without making it religious. Here's the next part of the script in paragraph form, continuing from the previous section. Word count target, 1,200 words. Let's now shift the lens and look at this entire journey through the eyes of Carl Jung, not as theology, but as deep inner psychology. When Carl Jung studied ancient texts, myths, and spiritual writings, he didn't read them literally. He saw them as maps of the human mind, stories that reflected the challenges, fears, and possibilities inside all of us. So when we take a passage like the one we just explored, the question isn't, do you believe it? The question is, can you recognize yourself in it? Jung believed that every person has two major parts: the ego and the self. The ego is the part that says I. It's the version of you that interacts with the world, your job, your personality, your beliefs. But the self is deeper. It holds all of you, the good, the bad, the broken, and the beautiful. And the journey of life, Jung said, is to move from living only in the ego toward reconnecting with the self. Now think back to that image. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. From Jung's point of view, this isn't about God. This is about surrendering the ego. It's about saying, I don't have all the answers. It's about letting go of control. And that's the beginning of real transformation, when you finally stop pretending you know where you're going and become willing to listen to something deeper. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This line could easily sit inside the psalm when it says he restores my soul. Jung might say that's what happens when the unconscious finally rises to the surface. When your hidden fears, your early wounds, and your repressed emotions stop being buried and start being faced. Here's something important. Jung never told people to be positive or just stay happy. He believed that darkness, the shadow, was just as important as light. And he was one of the first thinkers in modern psychology to say that the parts of ourselves we fear the most often hold the key to healing. That's why the valley of the shadow of death matters. It's not a punishment, it's a stage of the inner journey. Jung identified 4 major stages in the development of a healthy psyche: the persona, your mask, the face you show the world; the shadow, the hidden parts you've rejected; the anima, animus, your inner opposite or emotional unconscious; the self, the totality of who you really are. Now apply that to the psalm's structure. The beginning is like the persona, peaceful images, safety, green pastures, but then the story descends into the valley, into fear, into loneliness. That's the shadow phase. Jung believed that every real transformation must pass through this, and most people avoid it. They stay in distraction, denial, or fantasy. But if you avoid your shadow, you stay half alive. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And isn't that what the psalm does? It walks right into the fear, but it doesn't stay there. It keeps walking. That's individuation, Jung's word for the full development of the human being. A person who has faced their shadow, accepted their wounds, and brought all the hidden parts into harmony. The most powerful psychological moment in the psalm isn't the green pasture. It's not the cup that overflows. It's that small shift. From he is to you are with me. From third person to second person. That shift represents intimacy with the unconscious, connection with the self. It's not someone out there guiding you anymore. It's something in here, a deeper wisdom you've begun to trust. Jung saw this as a universal process. Every culture, every religion, every myth points to it in some way. But it doesn't belong to religion. It belongs to the human mind. Whether you're spiritual or not, this journey from false self to true self, from ego to shadow to integration, is happening inside you right now. Let's go even deeper. When the psalm says, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies, Jung would interpret this psychologically. Who are your enemies? Not other people. Your enemies are your repressed memories, your guilt, your fear of rejection, your fear of failure. These are the voices in your head that tell you you're not enough, and yet the psalm says you don't need to fight them. You can sit down at a table in peace, right in front of them. That's powerful psychology, because it means you no longer need to run from your shadow. You can face it, name it, and still feel worthy. That's healing. When you reach the end of the psalm, surely goodness and mercy will follow me. This is not fantasy. Jung would say this is the result of psychological integration. When you stop living in fragments, when you stop pretending, hiding, and escaping, you begin to carry peace with you, not because life gets easy, but because you're no longer divided inside. And when the psalm ends with, I will dwell in the house forever, Jung would say, this is what it means to be home, not in a building, but in yourself, to feel stable, whole, conscious, to be able to say, I know who I am, and I am not afraid of all that I contain. Jung's entire life work was a map back to the soul. Not a soul defined by religion, but a soul defined by integration, where your mind, body, emotions, and unconscious begin to work together instead of against each other. So, when we hear this ancient poem, we don't have to hear it as religious language. We can hear it as a map of descent, courage, and return, a mirror of the human experience, and a reminder that no matter how lost we feel, something wiser within us is always ready to guide us home, if we're willing to listen. You've just taken a deep journey, both through a timeless text and the mind of Carl Jung. But insight alone doesn't change a life, action does. Now let's talk about how to actually apply all of this in your daily life. These are small, psychological steps. No rituals, no religion, just inner work. Step 1. Start the morning. With grounding, not goals, before you check your phone, reply to messages, or even think about your to-do list. Give yourself 2 minutes of silence. Sit still, breathe slowly, and repeat this one line in your mind. I don't need to know everything. I just need to be present. This moment resets your nervous system. It shifts you out of ego and back into presence. The starting point for any transformation. Jung believed the ego loves control, but healing starts when we let go of control and listen instead. Step 2. Shadow work. Name the hidden emotion. Every time you feel triggered, upset, jealous, or anxious, pause. Don't scroll. Don't vent. Just ask yourself, what am I really feeling right now that I don't want to admit? Maybe you're scared of being left behind. Maybe you're feeling unimportant. That hidden feeling, that's your shadow speaking. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life. So write it down, not in your phone. Use a notebook. Label the emotion. Own it, even if it feels ugly. This one habit will change the way your mind works, because now instead of being run by the shadow, you're in dialogue with it. Step 3. End the day with the table visualization. Remember the line, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Jung would say, these enemies are your inner critics, old voices, fears, past failures. So each night, before sleep, close your eyes and imagine sitting at a table. Across from you, visualize your biggest inner fears. Rejection, failure, embarrassment. Don't fight them, just sit, let them be there, and then speak to them in your mind. You are part of me, but you are not all of me. I see you, and I choose peace. This trains your subconscious to stop seeing fear as the enemy and start seeing it as something you can live with without panic. Step 4. Use the shift point. During stressful moments, in the psalm there's a shift from he is to you are with me. Jung would call this the turning point of individuation, when the inner voice becomes personal. So next time you're overwhelmed, say this quietly in your mind. You are with me. It doesn't matter who or what you is. It can be your deeper self, your calm awareness, your inner witness. This shift turns your panic into presence. It reconnects you with your center. Step 5. Rebuild yourself with small acts of wholeness. Jung taught that healing isn't a dramatic event. It's the slow rebuilding of inner unity. So look for tiny daily actions that help you feel whole again. Saying no when you usually say yes. Being honest when you usually pretend. Taking a walk when you usually overthink. Resting without guilt. Letting go without explanation. Each small act of self-respect is a thread. Over time, those threads weave a new identity, one that's not ruled by fear, but guided by inner clarity. Step 6. Redefine the word faith. This isn't about religion. Faith in Jung's view wasn't belief in dogma. It was trust in the unconscious, a willingness to believe that something deeper in you knows the way, even when the ego doesn't. You don't need answers. You need willingness. The willingness to listen, to grow, to sit with discomfort, to allow your story to unfold. Repeat this line when you feel lost. I may not understand yet, but I trust that something inside me does. Step 7. Track the pattern. Not the progress. Instead of chasing quick results, Jung advised looking at patterns over time. Ask yourself weekly, what emotion keeps repeating this week? What thought am I believing that might not be true? What part of me feels ignored? Patterns don't lie. And when you start noticing them, you begin rewriting your inner story, gently, quietly, but powerfully. Final remedy, in wholeness over perfection, you don't have to be healed. You don't have to feel amazing every day. Jung's work was never about becoming perfect. It was about becoming whole. That means making room for every part of you, even the ones that still hurt. So today, give yourself permission to not be okay and still move forward, to feel doubt and still act with courage, to carry pain and still create beauty. That is the real meaning of the line. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me. It doesn't mean life will always be soft. It means you no longer walk alone because you've made peace with yourself. This isn't theory, this is practice. Real healing doesn't come from avoiding your shadow. It comes from sitting beside it, listening to it, and choosing to walk forward. Anyway, let this be the beginning of that journey.